I appreciate everyone coming tonight. We have a pretty busy schedule for the next 2 hours, and there's going to be a lot of information disseminated, and I think you're going to be pleased and actually amazed at what we're going to present to you tonight. Before we get started, though, it was my pleasure to present our new Chancellor, Dr. Arlene Hall of our Penn State facility here.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this premier campus, Penn State Fayette, the Everly campus. And we're very pleased to work with the community whenever we can. And I know this is a very, we could say maybe hot button issue, but this is where things take place at the very best, where we intersect educational opportunities and educational facilities with our community. So we welcome you and we thank you for the support that you give us in the community, and that Penn State will always remain one of your best partners. I wish the panel and all of those who are presenting tonight good luck, and I wish you a good interchange. And remember that we are Penn State here, but we are also the Fayette County region, and we're here to serve you, and we're here to make this a better place to live, work, and study. So best wishes for your evening, and you're always welcome back to Penn State Fayette. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Tonight, I'm going to get a little housekeeping items out of the way first. During the presentation, everybody will have the opportunity to ask a question in written form. Nicole here has some note cards and pens, so if anybody wants to write a question down that we'll be answering in the second half of the evening, please just kind of give her the signal. She'll keep an eye out, and she'll be collecting those. And just to keep us honest, we're going to pass those questions through Patty Yager, who is our local reporter, just to make sure that we don't take out all the tough questions. And then we'll have our couple panel members, the controller and Controller Sean Lally and Commissioner Vince Zapatowski, to select out the duplicates, and then we'll read those questions, and our various panel members will answer those. And just to let you know who all is here tonight, I'd like to ask each of the panel members to state their name and their role here tonight. We can start with Tammy.
I am Tammy Lambium, Deputy Court Administrator.
Steve Laskinen, Common Pleas Court Judge.
Gina Diaria, Administrator from Children and Youth.
Brian Miller, Warden.
Reverend Terry Sanders, the Chaplain, Fayette County Prison.
Controller Sean Lally, Fayette County.
Good evening, Vince Zapatowski, Fayette County Commissioner.
Lisa Ferris, the Administrator for the Fayette County Behavioral Health Administration and Chair of the Mental Health, Drug and Alcohol Committee associated with this panel.
Jim Killinger, the Architectural Team Leader for the Prison Working Group.
Jim Custer, Deputy Sheriff.
As you can see, we have a lot of knowledgeable people, certainly the heavyweights when it comes to the stakeholders for the prison project. In addition, I'm pleased to let you know that we have Mr. Tom Crabtree here tonight. He is the principal in the company of Crabtree Robaugh Associates. He is a prison expert in prison planning and design. And he is going to actually present the prison needs assessment study, the economic needs assessment study tonight. So what we're going to do is, in a second, let him get started with his presentation, because it's going to impart a tremendous amount of knowledge and information to you, and that's, I guess, the reason this facility was built in the first place. In addition, again, please remember Nicole here has note cards. If any time during the presentation you choose to want a card to write a question down, we'll collect them later. Probably try to take a break about the midway point through the presentation, and so without any more delay, I'd like to present Mr. Tom Crabtree to come up and begin his presentation.
Good evening. I'm Tom Crabtree. I'm president of Crabtree Rawbon Associates. I'm not sure this is helpful or heard. Yeah. Can everybody hear me here? Is this good? Yeah, I think we'll do it without that. I'm president of Crabtree Rawbon Associates. We're architects and correctional planners. We've been asked by the county to look at your situation and try to provide the information to the community, to the prison board, to the commissioners that you need to be able to make a good decision going forward for Fayette County. The problem that I think everybody is aware of is that your jail is old. That in itself isn't a problem, except your jail is small and old, and you have a lot more people in your jail than it's designed to hold, and as a result of that, you're sending people to 5 other counties at a cost this month of about $150,000 just for the boarding costs, not including the transportation and the additional staffing that it takes to move those inmates around. So you have an economic problem. You're not unusual. Your prison population has grown at pretty much the same rate as the statewide prison population, actually slower than the statewide averages. But in the last 5 years in particular, it's grown at the statewide average of about 4.8%. So you've had growth in your prison population. You're not unusual in that way. Many, many counties have dealt or are dealing with the same issues associated with their prison that you are. A little bit about my background. These are the various counties and jurisdictions in mostly Pennsylvania that we have done this process for. Not every one of these evaluations results in a construction project. Not every evaluation results in the same recommendation. We have to be independent. It's our duty to you to tell you give you the information that you need as a community and that the prison board and the commissioners need as your representatives to make the right decisions. That process that we go through involves a bunch of steps. We conduct program interviews with the county commissioners, with the prison administration, with representatives of the court, the district attorney, law enforcement officials, all of the people involved in the criminal justice system. We've interviewed or are in the process of interviewing and gathered information to try to understand what it is that is making your system what it is. We've evaluated the operating procedures of your facility. We've toured your facility. We've looked at what the physical conditions of your facility are. We've done an analysis of your population. We've done statistical analysis of who's in your jail, why they're there, what the possibilities are of reducing that population, and we've got suggestions to the county on those issues. We have reviewed statistical information that's published by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Department of Corrections, your own county statistical information, as well as Uniform Crime Reporting Act information and Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency statistical information. All of that is used to build a profile, a historic profile of where you've been, what you've done, and how you got to where you are, and where you're likely to go with your prison population in the future. We've also reviewed the facility against the American Correctional Association standards for adult local detention centers. This is a nationally accepted standard that gives you a benchmark for measuring the constitutionality of your facility. American Correctional Association has been out there for over 30 years, providing guidance and direction to local adult detention centers as well as all other kinds of correctional facilities. We begin with evaluation of the existing conditions. What have you got? You have a facility that has a rated capacity of 239 beds. What do I mean by the rated capacity? That's what it's designed to hold if you follow the basic standards of providing enough square footage for each bed, providing enough showers and toilet facilities for each inmate. Very basic standards. If you apply those standards to your facility, its original design capacity was about 239. There was a renovation done in 1962. That's really the last time anything, there was a kitchen renovation done along the way since then, but really the last time any major work was done at the facility was 1962, and that's when this rated capacity was established. You have a current utilization, we'll call this the current operating capacity of your facility of 262 beds. You achieved that by putting bunks in hallways, taking over any available space in the prison that was used for other programs and services, putting bunks in those places. So if you ask the warden how many beds have you got, he's going to say, well, I've got 262 beds. If you ask the American Correctional Association how many beds should you have, they would say the number of 229. The current utilization number, the way you operate the prison today, falls 110 beds short of your average daily population in July of this year. Average daily population is a statistical term that measures just what it sounds like. What is the average population every day in July? Might be 280 one day and 260 the next, and you average that out and you get, for the month of July, an average daily population of 110 beds more than 262, so that's 372. That was the average population in July. The rated capacity is a few more beds less than that. So if you remove the bunks that are in hallways and in areas that are inappropriate for housing, you'd be about 132 beds short, 133 beds short. What do you do about that? Right now, what you're doing about that is you're shipping inmates as far away as Center County. You're paying to board those inmates an average of about $60 a day, and you are paying to transport those inmates back and forth to court as many times as is necessary to meet the requirements of the court or whatever other issue they have, or to just get them back home when they're released. So you have transportation costs. As a result of those transportation costs, you've hired additional staff that is conducting those transports. So that's becoming a bigger snowball as your population goes up. This is your existing facility. I think everybody's pretty familiar with it. The courthouse annex, the parking areas, the boiler building. So the first thing we do as we go through your existing facility, we do measured drawings. We determine what you've got, how many beds, what's appropriate. All of that work has been done to arrive at what we call your rated capacity and to observe what your actual utilization of the facility is. We then did a building condition summary, and it's pretty easy to say that all of the systems in your building the heating system, the lighting system, the electrical system, the fire alarm system, the life safety systems, food service equipment, everything in your building has been there since 1962. Now, if you hadn't replaced your boiler at home since 1962, you'd say, well, I'm probably due. So everything in this facility is due. The building has reached its useful life in terms of the system. The existing building itself is a beautiful, elegant old building with a myriad of stairways, and therefore it's not ADA compliant, which is another issue, and it doesn't conform with most current building codes. So there are issues associated with the building that need to be addressed regardless of what you do with regard to whether you expand or not, or continue to board your inmates. And one of the things that I've said to the prison board this morning, and I would say to anyone, is if it's cheaper to board your inmates, that's what you should do. Okay, this decision is one that's driven by the cost of operating the county. What is going to make the minimal impact on the taxpayers of this county? How can we keep your correctional costs at a minimum? And that's what we will explore over the next probably 50 minutes. I'll try to keep my remarks so we give you plenty of time for questions. In addition to the current systems, the annex also, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, actually has some issues. It was a temporary facility, not really a secure building, so there are some security things and some ADA compliance issues also in the annex. So there are issues that need to be addressed in the annex. Not huge issues, but nevertheless issues. Importantly, the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections Office of County Inspections and Services has determined that your facility is non-compliant in 80 of the 142 inspection points that they look at. So they got 142 things that they're supposed to say yes or no on, and you're non-compliant in 80 of them, driven largely by the condition and configuration of your building. One of the things that we always do, and we're not suggesting you need to spend this money today or tomorrow, but one of the things that we always do as a part of this is determine what would it cost to upgrade the facility to meet current standards so that you could just continue to use it as you are. Okay? This wouldn't add any beds, it wouldn't solve your overcrowding problem, it wouldn't eliminate the transport issue, but it would at least make the building safe for your staff and for your inmates, and secure for your staff and for your inmates. So if you decide to keep the building as it is, you need to spend about $7 million on the existing building or the older building and $300,000 on the annex to just bring yourself up to basic code, basic correctional standards, basic code requirements. Okay? The existing building is about 33,000 square feet, which sounds like a lot, but that's really not a very big county jail. But to get that 33,000 square feet in a condition that you could say, okay, we're good to go for the next 20 years with this building, this is what you need to do. I want to point out that renovation of that prison and annex to meet current standards does not change the issue of boarding inmates. Just doing that doesn't give you more beds. In fact, it reduces your bed count to the rated capacity. Now, you could always put bunks back in the hallways, but at some point, some inspector from Labor and Industry or one of the other agencies could walk through and say, hey, get these bunks out of here. They're in the hallways. They're impeding egress. It's not good. So that's important. In July of 2013, and I've already said this, the average daily population was 372 inmates. In July in that month, you spent over $150,000 just paying other counties to board those inmates. That doesn't include the cost of transporting them, as I said. it also doesn't include your cost of processing and doing the medical workups that are required. So you're doing all the heavy lifting. You're doing the processing, you're determining who you've got, what you've got, you're getting him through the court system, and at some point, if that individual gets sentenced, you may be able to send him out to another facility. You're doing all the hard work, you're paying another county what it costs you to operate your jail to do the easy part, to babysit, to watch your inmate watch TV in their modern jail. And that's a reality that is out there, that you're paying as much as it would cost to operate your own jail to somebody else, and you're absorbing all the costs of the staff to move them, of the processing time and cost of getting that inmate in and out of your system, and that's a cost above and beyond what it would cost you to be dealing with them. Needs assessment. So we talked about your existing facility. I hope you don't really have to go into the facility to understand what it probably looks like in there, but it looks like a movie of an old jail. You know, if you've seen the rows of cells and the bars, and it looks a lot like you might expect from looking from the outside. And those of you that have been in there, it's not a good working environment for your staff, and certainly not a safe environment. So after we understand what your building is like, then we need to figure, okay, what do you need? And that largely involves statistical information. These are the monthly population statistics of your jail going back to 2003. So we've got 10 years of data that we've gathered through your administration, your warden, confirmed with the Department of Corrections. 10 years of data on what's happened with your jail population by month. And as you look at that 10 years of data, you see 2013, the average daily population in 2013 was 321. Okay, that's more inmates than you have beds for. That's the average daily population for the entire year to date. You see the average daily population for July. Whoops. Back up here, sorry. There we go. The average daily population for July, right there, is 372 inmates. It wasn't much better than that in June or May, 369, 366. So you've got this growth in your population that is, right now, July is a benchmark month. We're going to set July as where we are trying to analyze where are you going from here. That peak population, that peak month of July is important because when we analyze average daily population and we calculate the size that you need, how many beds you need for your population, you have to recognize that there are going to be peaks in your population that are going to last an entire month. You got to have beds. You can't send them away and say, come back another day, at least in most cases. So you have to have the bed space available when you need it. We've done some evaluation in your needs assessment to try to understand whether or not you have people in your jail that shouldn't be there. Do you have people that you could be putting into an alternative program that would be less costly to the county? And what we can say is your jail population is being driven by how many arrests you have. You're no different from anybody else. You have a high arrest rate. You have a lot of people getting arrested relative to your neighbors and relative, not more than everybody, but more than some. And you have a high DUI arrest rate. So you've got those two things that are contributing to your jail population. The bright spot in your statistical information is the number of people in jail per arrest is actually below the averages of your neighbors and the other fourth-class counties in Pennsylvania. So, yes, you're arresting a lot of people. We could argue that you should change that pattern. I'm not sure that we can change it in this room, but hopefully economic development initiatives and things can change that. But in the meantime, you're going to have to deal with your jail population, okay? And you're not locking up more people per arrest. In fact, you're locking up fewer people per arrest than most other fourth-class counties, than the counties that are surrounding you, every way, than the statewide average, every way we measure it. What's causing that? There's a healthy pressure on your system to perform well. There's a healthy pressure created by lack of space in your jail on your system to keep the number of people in the jail down to the minimum that the community expects, the minimum that the standard that's established by you who elect the judges expect. Do you expect a rapist to be in your jail? You had 22 forcible rapes in this county last year, forcible rape arrests. Those are people we all expect to be in jail. If you go down your uniform crime statistics, you might be surprised. You know, there's kind of a notion that, well, not all the guys in that jail are bad guys, and there's probably some truth to that. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad actors in that jail. And that's important to know and to remember. The community expects bad actors to be dealt with by the criminal justice system in a variety of ways. We then take that population data and we evaluate it. The top section up there is the running string of population since 2013. Since 2013, your population has grown by 26.05%, right there. Since 2003, you had about 10.5% of your population was females. Today, it's more like 14%, 13 to 14%. Sentencing guidelines, mandatory sentencing, DUI sentence, all of those things are contributing to, and this is not you alone, this is every county in Pennsylvania, an increase in female population in your jail. So that's a trend that we need to be aware of. And I mentioned the peaking. You're peaking at 15, 17, 13, depends on the year. Your peaks are higher than your average daily population by a lot. We need to recognize that so that when we project your needs, we recognize that those peaks will be there. We've done two different methods of projecting, two different models of projecting. The first one uses the last 10-year average of 2.61% a year and does a straight line projection, current year 322, average daily population, not peak, average daily population, 5-year projected of 364, 10-year projection of 406. This highlighted projection is our recommended projection that you work with in terms of what are your needs. We could take the 5-year, the most recent 5-year trends in your system and notice that the growth is much faster than it was over the recent 10 years, and you've got 4.8% growth in the last 5 years. If you use those numbers to project, you project much higher numbers, 476, 20 years out, 630. We don't recommend that you try to build your way out of this problem and that you try and that you build more than we can possibly justify statistically that you're going to need. When you realize that your population in July was 372 inmates, it's not unreasonable to expect that your average daily population is going to be 406 when you've been increasing at the rates you've been increasing. So we are recommending to the prison board the lowest projection because we don't want you to overbuild, and we want to keep that healthy pressure on your system to utilize all the alternatives that are available to you and add some new ones. You're in the process of doing a day reporting system. You're in the process of implementing some mental health programs, And those are very important things to do to keep that pressure off the growth numbers in your population. If those programs are not successful, you will see the bottom numbers happen. So it's imperative that the initiatives that have been started in the county happen and are funded and are successful so that you can, in fact, work with those lower projections that we're recommending. When you take the peaking factors that we need to add to that, for an average daily population of 406 inmates, you need 480 beds available. You can't put a female into the male section. You have to have capacity where you need it. So that diversity factor or that classification factor also enters into why 480 is the right number for you. With that information, just knowing how many beds you need, we know the security level of your inmates, we know how many Part 1 offenses, how many Part 2 offenses or arrests are in the county. We can develop a concept of what your jail should be like in terms of the spaces you need, how many maximum security beds, how many minimum security beds, how many medium security beds. All of that information goes into this document, which is simply a listing of spaces. It's a function and area summary. It doesn't just include bed spaces. It includes food service facilities, worship facilities, medical facilities, treatment program facilities, hearing rooms, courtrooms, all of the things that you need to operate a jail today. With that information, you come to a realization that the space you need to operate this facility to last this county through that 10-year projection is about 98,000 square feet of space. Your existing jail has 33,000 square feet of space. We have a shortfall of square footage if we're going to solve the boarding problem. We know what your existing situation is. We've projected what your needs are going to be. Now, what are your options to solving those problems, to addressing those needs? What are the options available to you? We've identified 3 options that we are providing the cost information for you tonight. Option 0, the zero construction option. Don't build anything. It's expensive to build. Don't build anything. That option requires that you do at least the basic code work to the facility, or at least we have to advise you that you need to do that. And it requires you to continue to transport and board inmates in other counties at whatever cost is available. One of the phenomenons that's happened, okay, as you've gotten your first 20 or 30 or 40 beds out there, they're pretty close by. As your need grows, those jails don't have any room either, and you're having to go farther and farther away to solve the problem of where you're going to house this inmate. Option 1 is construct additions and renovations at the existing jail site. We've got 33,000 square feet. Can we add to it and solve the problem and fit everything on the site? And option 2 is develop an all-new facility. We've developed drawings. Option 0 is the existing condition drawings that you already saw. Option 1 would be an addition that looks something like this. This is the jail. There's the courthouse. Would require you to develop some parking, some structured parking. This would be a 3-story, 6-level building to get the kind of square footage you need to solve your problem. Support facilities and an entrance here. And we've developed more detailed drawings, not for the purpose of developing the design. These are concept drawings, but for the purpose of determining how can we solve it, and more importantly, what would the layout have to be, because at the end of the day, the most important thing, believe it or not, is not what it's going to cost to build this building. The most important thing is, what is it going to cost to staff this building? Okay, so the staffing pattern is very important for us to be able to identify and to project, so that we can project the costs of staffing, which is going to outweigh the costs of construction by 300%. So we've got these concept drawings for the existing site, and we developed a concept drawing for a hypothetical new site. This is an efficient layout that creates 4 80-bed units and a female area and some lower security and work release beds, and all of the core facilities necessary to operate the facility. Those core facilities we would recommend be designed to handle future expansion. You can see we've made provisions for it, because as hopeful as I am that your initiatives are going to be successful and you're going to be able to keep your growth to a minimum, or maybe even level it off, the possibility exists that that the system simply won't enable you to do that. The offenses that are being committed in this community are not all things that you can control with alternative programs. Okay, I had a great discussion with one of the members of the criminal justice system, and talked about, it's great to have this bracelet system where we send a guy home. What happens when he violates parole and wears his bracelet into the local bar and gets drunk and gets in a fight? Well, he's violated his parole, he's violated the conditions of that. What choice does the court have? Well, maybe they're going to give him another chance, and they're going to put a bigger bracelet or something on him. And at some point he's going to do it again, and unfortunately that is a pattern that we have to recognize is real in the criminal justice system. Okay, and when you reach all your alternatives, have run out on alternatives, he's going to end up in the county jail. So these are the concept drawings of how that facility might work, what it might look like. What's important, again, is to be able to establish a staffing pattern for what that facility would be like, for what the option 0 would be like, what staffing. You don't really need to add much staff in the jail. You need to add a couple people to process inmates, but you have to add transport staff. You've already added that transport staff, okay, to move them around, to get them here and there. And those you've added enough transport staff to staff the housing that you would need to house those inmates. So we do a capacity analysis of each of those 3 options. Option 0 creates 229 beds. Option 1 creates the 480 beds that you need. Option 2 creates 480 beds. This is the most important thing we're going to talk about tonight. This is a staffing analysis of your existing facility and a projection of what your staffing would need to be on each of these options. We begin by looking at your actual patterns of staffing, your vacation time, your sick leave, all of the things that enter into how many people it takes to fill a post. What's a post? A post is a place in the jail where you need a person 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. For every post that you have, you need 5 full-time employees. You're not unusual in that. That number ranges, by my experience, between 4.86 and 5.1. You're right in the middle of that. It takes 5 people to man a post in this county, based on your collective bargaining agreement and all the things that you got. So with that knowledge, the first thing we do is we test your existing staffing. This is your existing staffing. These are how many posts you have. This is your administrative staff and your program and treatment and maintenance staff and your transport staff. This is what your budget was based on in 2013. And if you had every post filled with a full-time employee, who didn't quit and need retraining, it would require 60 full-time people to operate your current jail. That's consistent with your budget, that's consistent with your payroll data, that's exactly what it would take. Unfortunately, in response to the growth in population, you've recently hired 15 part-time correctional officers who are filling duties wherever they can and getting trained and doing all the things that need to be done so that you have the trained staff to transport inmates to other facilities. You can't transport 20 at a time. They're all on their own schedules, demanded by the court, demanded by whatever demands are placed on your system. You've got to get them where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. We then look at option 0. And as I said, we really don't need any additional administrative staff. We don't really need any additional posts. All we've done in option 0 is add the transport staff that you've already added. Okay? And that brings your total staffing from 60 to 84.72. That's a lot more people running your jail. And this is projected, by the way, for when your population reaches 406 as your average daily population. This is what it will take when your population reaches that. Option 1, additions and renovations on the existing site. Not surprisingly, it's a multi-story facility. The housing units are smaller, requires a lot of staff, requires more staff, 90.27 staff to operate option 1. That's the renovation option, additions and renovation option. Option 2 is a more efficient arrangement, larger housing units that can be manned by the same staff, and that results in a staffing of 71.9. So we have a difference in staffing that will contribute to a difference in operating cost. We also, because I felt like this was valuable information to know, what would the staffing need to be in the first year of operation of option 2? If you build it, but your population hasn't reached 406 as an average daily population, it's more like 380 or smaller population. Can you not utilize any area of that building and still operate it? And the answer is yes, you can make a slight reduction in staff and operate with 70.23. So this is more of a comparative, what happens in 2 years or 3 years analysis that becomes useful as we go forward. So now we know how many people it takes to operate the jail. We have to now develop an operating cost model for your facility. I know this is hard to see, but this is the line item budget of your existing jail. And the existing budget, somebody help me, 5.8 million? 5.8 million is your operating budget for your existing jail. That's the adopted budget for 2013. Unfortunately, we can project that based on the pattern of boarding that's already occurring and the pattern of staffing that's already occurring, your 2014 budget is going to be about $2.4 million higher than your 2013 budget. You've already spent over $1 million just in the boarding costs, not including the staffing and transport and all of the other costs associated with it. So the existing condition next year is projected to be $8.4 million. If you take option 0 and you add the transport staff and you add, really that's it, you add the transport staff to it and you add the number of inmates that gets you out there to that 10-year projection, you get a budget of $10.7 million. Now, the way we calculate these line items is it's a factor of one of several things. Each budget line item ties to a piece of data. Food ties to how many beds, how many inmates are you feeding. You have a cost of over $1,000 a bed per year per inmate. So food ties to inmates. Uniforms ties to staff. Medical costs ties to a cost per inmate. So we create a cost per inmate or a cost per staff. Utility cost ties to the cost to the square footage of the building. How big is the building? If we build a big building, utility costs are going to be greater than your 33,000 square foot building. So we tie all of those costs of your current operation, and we create unit costs, and we apply them to the numbers of staff and square footage and inmates and the variables, and that's how we develop these budgets. So option 0 is $10.7 million. Option 1 is $7.7 million. Option 2 is $6.4 million. $6.4 million as an operating cost is less than you're going to spend next year. And this is a 10-year projection. It's in today's dollars, but in today's dollars, $6.4 million is $1,911,000 lower per year than option 0. Okay? What drives that? Staff. Utility costs are higher. The food costs are the same per inmate. Medical costs are the same per inmate. They're contracted. Staff is what drives your budget. We then need to develop, that's only the operating side. We now have options that involve construction. We need to know what that construction is going to cost, and we need to factor that into your operating budget. Option 0, as I've already said, takes about between $7 and $8 million to upgrade the facility to continue to operate it within the law. Option 1, big ticket, $34 to $40 million to do the additions and renovations on that tight site, that constricted site. Multi-story construction gets more expensive. Lots of logistical problems. Where do we put the inmates when we're doing it? All of those things factor into a big price tag. Option 2, all new facility, $27 to $31 million. This is based on, remember that number, 98,400 square feet of new construction, which is what you need. You then use your likely financing scenario, and I'm sure Mr. Lally will be working day and night to try to reduce your interest costs and reduce your amortization costs, but undeniably you will have interest and amortization costs, and we need to factor that into this equation. And all of those things get distilled down to a cost per bed per day. So the cost per bed per day of just fixing up the existing facility is $3.80 per bed per day for every bed you have, for every inmate you have. The cost of option 1 is $18.03 per bed per day for every inmate you have. And the cost of option 2 is $13.97 per bed per day. We take those costs and we add them to the cost per bed per day of operating your jail that we showed you in the big spreadsheet. And you get a cost per bed per day of $76, is that 76? Yeah. $76.51 for option 0, $76.51 per bed per day. Option 1, $70.65 per bed per day, and option 2, $57.83 per bed per day. Today, as we speak, you are spending about $61 per bed per day. Okay, when you factor in everything that's going on in the county right now. What does that mean? At an average daily population of 406, the total annual cost of each option, including debt service, is, this is the annual prison budget, $11,338,000 for option 0, $10,457,000 for option 1, and $8,347,000 for option 2. The annual cost of option 0 is $2,990,385 a year more than option 2. If you do not act, you will spend $3 million a year more on your jail than what you're spending today. Over 30 years, which is the life of the debt on this building, that will be more than $85 million. I think I'm ready for questions.
Mr. Pritchard, I noticed you came in a little late, so you probably missed out on what I had discussed earlier. Is Nicole has note cards and pens for anybody who would like to write down their questions, and we will answer those questions either from Mr. Tom Rope, Mr. Tom Crabtree, or the panel members. So if you would like a note card and pen, Nicole will distribute those now. That will allow us to answer as many questions as we possibly can in the time remaining.
How do we do for time at that hour?
Yeah, about an hour. 6:52, so that was very good.
Do you have yours, Mr. Massa? You already won yours? Yes. Oh, if you want to take that. Commissioner Mercedes, here's a question. Do they have to sign their name too?
No, you don't. You don't have to sign your name.
Are you going to be using the screen?
Yeah, I'll probably flip back when I answer questions because most of the questions will be addressed on that screen already.
While we're waiting for the written questions to come forward, if any of the panel members would like to make any comments at this time, this would be a good time. Okay, well, I guess we have a lot of shy people up here today. No, I was asking for comments from the panel.
Jim Killinger, we were asked this morning about the number of sites that we looked at. We looked at a total of 18 since November of last year. 18 different sites throughout the county, various townships, and we chose, we think, the best site, which was the Fayette County Fairgrounds. We eliminated many sites. We got down to 3, and from those 3 we wound up looking at the fairgrounds. Now the other sites were eliminated due to cost, the acreage. We wanted something with probably 20 acres or better, so we have room to expand in the future, so we don't have to build another prison if that happens. So that's how the fairgrounds got picked. Its location is in the center of the county. The county owns it. We don't have to pay any cost for the fairgrounds. But that question came up at the prison board meeting this morning, and I gave the news media a copy of those 18 sites. I don't know if they're going to publish it, but they have the copy of all the sites.
Commissioner Ambrosini, if I could make a comment as well. As I mentioned in the beginning, my role on the work group of the prison was primarily to look at what would be the most conducive arrangements with new space or accommodating existing space, et cetera, as far as treatment options for folks with serious mental illness and or substance abuse issue. And I believe the gentleman from Crabtree had mentioned that we've been performing very well, that the county's performed very well in providing alternative sentencing programs, new daily reporting center, et cetera. So we're doing a really good job outside the walls in order to maintain as best possible the number of folks that are within the walls. But we are not doing a good job inside the walls. The current facility does not have conducive arrangements at all for any rehabilitation. We are just housing folks. There's no space currently for there to be proper treatment, mental health-wise, drug and alcohol-wise. There's no space for groups. There's no confidentiality. In my opinion, and looking at it from a treatment component, we're not rehabilitating prisoners at all. Upon release, I don't feel that we have provided them the best options, the best tools possible in order not to commit crime again and to handle their current illnesses. We all know that in treating drug and alcohol issues, it's always good to be in a group forum, to be able to share with others and deal with the same type of issues within the prison, and we're not able to do that. I just think the 630 folks in 20 years from now could be less than that if we actually rehabilitate people. I think we see criminogenic behavior in Fayette County because folks are not getting the treatment they need while inside the walls.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We'll start. I'll read the questions, and we'll have one of the individuals give us the answers. Now, the first question is, I think a typical question, and certainly appropriate. And the question is, how many prisons has Crabtree Robaugh Associates designed and the prisons are actually in operation right now? So obviously that's a question that Mr. Crabtree would be qualified to answer.
We've designed in excess of 25 county facilities in Pennsylvania. We've designed 3 county correctional facilities in Maryland and several in Virginia. We designed Pennsylvania's maximum security state correctional institution at Greene County. We designed Pennsylvania's state correctional institution at Mahanoy Township, which is in northern Pennsylvania above Harrisburg. We designed the security improvements to the Camp Hill Correctional Institution after the riots that occurred many years ago. We designed the entire county jail system of the state of West Virginia, which was required by court order to be constructed because they were found to be non-compliant with constitutional standards, and the state of West Virginia was ordered to close all of their county jails and build replacement facilities. We designed all of those jails, 11 of them. We designed the state correctional facility for women at Lakin, West Virginia. We designed the old men's facility at Prunytown, West Virginia. So in our 28 years as a firm, we've completed over 25,000 beds of construction at a cost in today's dollars of over $2 billion. We've also made recommendations to counties not to build. Okay, we're not here to create a project. We're here to give you the advice you need to make your decisions. If I was here to create a project, I'd be all hot on option one. What a project that would be. Okay, but it's not a good idea. Option two is your best idea. It's self-evident from the numbers, but that's not my decision. That's your decision as a community, as a prison board, and as commissioners. So our experience is extensive. We are as experienced or more experienced than any other firm in Pennsylvania. We're recognized as national leaders. We've designed facilities in Tennessee and Georgia and all over the Mid-Atlantic region.
Thank you. The next question is on August 28th, 2013, in a letter to the editor, a citizen asked about the possibility of buying or leasing the Westmoreland closed prison. Now, this is the Greensburg SCI, State Correctional Facility. He stated that it should be much less expensive than building a new prison. Maybe those already sentenced could be sent there. Have the commissioners explored this idea? If it is not viable, could you please explain why? Thank you. I'm going to start this answer to this question. I'm going to leave Mr. Crabtree follow up because
It's a coincidence.
yeah.
About 30 years ago, I designed the last additions to that facility. Okay, it was an antiquated old state correctional institution, and we added new housing units, but the antiquated old housing units remained in service. The Department of Corrections came to the conclusion 30 years later that the operating efficiency of that facility is too low. It does not compare well with their other facilities, many of which we have designed. Okay, so the difference in the configuration of that building and the configurations that we're proposing for your county facility here, and the same kind of housing configurations that we've used in the new state facilities, results in a lower staffing requirement for the facility. It's that simple. That facility is larger than you need by over 100,000 square feet. So you'd have the question of what do you do with that square footage? Do you tear it down? I don't think maybe the commissioners can address whether they even broach the subject of what would be the purchase price. But the major issue that would drive the numbers on that facility would be the very inefficient configuration of housing. The old housing units on that building, it's what we call the telephone pole design. There's a main corridor, and then there's housing units that go across it like a telephone pole. And the housing units are long, skinny corridors with cells on both sides that look just like Escape from Alcatraz. You know, they look just like the movies, okay? They're very difficult to manage because you can't see anything. A staff at one end can't see anything that's going on at the other end. When you take those narrow corridors and you open them up and you create the day room space that the inmates need for their meals and for their daily routine, and you make that all observable by staff that can be on the unit in a safe environment, you reduce the operating expense of the facility by reducing the number of staff it takes to operate it. It's that simple. That facility served its useful life. 30 years after we did a renovation, they decommissioned it. They decommissioned it for the same reason they did the renovation 30 years ago, to try to enhance the operating efficiency. We just finished a new housing unit, an expanded housing unit in northern Pennsylvania that essentially replaced the beds that were in that unit because they can operate it much more efficiently. The same thing would be true of you. There is no way that you could operate that facility as efficiently as you could operate a facility that was designed to meet your needs and your operating criteria.
I guess I don't need to add anything to that, except I just want to point out that
Please speak a little louder.
I just want to point out that in a joint county operation like that, there would have to be agreement from the courts of both counties. There would have to be basically a board of directors, operating board set up for that prison. It would not, and that would be tough to do since the prison is, as Mr. Crabtree pointed out, the reason that it was decommissioned simply because it was not operationally efficient. We already have one of those here in Fayette County, so we don't want to travel 25 miles to use another one. And obviously that would not help our transportation costs at all, would actually increase. The next question is, can the existing facility be made ADA and code compliant, including elevators, doors, corridor widths, toilet facilities, stairs, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical and security systems? Since the study addressed that, I'll let Tom.
This is what you would have to do to meet the criteria in that question. To make the facility ADA compliant. You notice I said it's a zero construction option, but you would need to add about 4,000 square feet just to put the elevators and appropriate stairways on the building. So yes, it can physically be done. Is it a good idea? You judge for yourself whether it's a good idea to maintain option 0. Okay, but it's possible physically, but it doesn't get you any more bed space. I said 33,000, I misspoke. It's 31,000 square feet. It's about a third of the square footage you have. About 20% of that square footage is walls. So the useful space in that building is minimal. And frankly, we would not recommend any parts of that building be used for housing. It would house administrative functions in the option 1 that we showed you, all the housing, so that we can get as an efficient arrangement as possible. All the housing would be new construction, and we'd use the old jail for support functions. But yes, it's physically possible. And that's what that cost to upgrade represents.
The next question is, it costs money to house an inmate in the county. It costs $60 plus transport to house them out of the county. Shouldn't the net cost by the difference between the cost? I'm not sure I quite understand this, but I think Tom did a very good job of explaining, boiling this down to the cost of inmate per day for all 3 options that we discussed in length. And obviously, as it turned out, the lesser cost in all 3 options is to build a new facility designed specifically for our needs. It will be more efficient, obviously, than option 0 and option 1, and significantly less in our, not only our operating costs, but the debt service and in the total cost altogether. Next question, are you going to address a juvenile facility within the new prison? We have talked about that, and that will be part of the design discussions once we hire an architect and go forward. There's going to be a lot of details that will be worked out after we hire an architect to go to the next step. And there's a lot of things that we've been talking about over the past year, in fact, not only the spaces that we need for counseling services, for training services, for rehabilitation services, some visitation how do we do family visitation, especially with children. So all those things we've discussed at length, and will be incorporated into the new design.
It should be clarified. We want to make sure everybody understands. The juveniles, I think, that are being addressed in that question are juveniles who are charged as adults. Juveniles who are not charged with an adult offense cannot be housed in this facility. They are wards of the Department of Welfare and are not wards of the Department of Corrections. Okay, so those individuals cannot be brought to this facility. They, I believe, now go to Westmoreland County. Okay, but a juvenile charged as an adult, there's some recent legislation, some recent court decisions that compel you to provide separation of various classes of inmates, and that would be one class of inmate that you would definitely try to maintain separation for. That's impossible to do in your existing facility because you don't have any ability to classify anybody and separate them from anyone. But in a new facility, you would normally design a small housing area that could accommodate juveniles who are sentenced as adults and are on trial or in adjudication, or if they're sentenced as an adult, they're not likely to get sentenced to the county jail, okay, because they've committed an offense that is so heinous that they're being treated as an adult. So it's really, what do you do to house those individuals while they are in adjudication?
Thank you, Tom. Next question: as a taxpayer, can I get a copy of of this study minus the security issues? Yes. We want, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. And we have 3 more of these sessions scheduled around the county over the next couple weeks. We want to make sure the public has the facts. We want to make sure that if you want the numbers to hold in your hand and review and study, we certainly want to get that to you. So we'll make those available to anybody who wants a copy of the statistics and the costs. Why is our need for 406 capacity? I'm not sure I can read the rest of this, but we spent, I think we spent considerable time going through the steps it takes to figure out what our capacity needs are going forward with the jail. Those will be in the statistics. You're more than welcome to review those
I think that question seems to be driving at the question of, well, we're doing a day reporting system, and we are initiating mental health programs. We've got programs that are alternative programs, and we're all optimistic that those are going to work. And I am too, okay, and I want them to work. This question, Commissioner Zimmerling called in and asked a question at the prison board this meeting: are we taking those into consideration in our projections? Are we taking all of that information into consideration? And the answer is yes. If I wasn't taking those into consideration, I'd be using the higher projections. Okay, because there's just no statistical basis other than those programs to believe that the trends of the last 5 years aren't going to continue. Now, we could have a war in Vietnam and a draft that would take crime-age men into the military and reduce crime, and that happened during Vietnam, but it hasn't happened since. Okay, so there are things that can happen within the community, and if the economy improves and some of your redevelopment issues are successful, and your economic development issues are successful, we would expect that crime rate and that incarceration rate to slow down. As you can see in your data, as the economy goes up and down, so does the crime data go up and down. But the undeniable reality is that in the last 20 years of data, that curve has gone up and down, but is on an upward trend. Sure, next month we might not have 372, we might have 355. But over the long haul, over the next 4 years, there is no statistical reason to believe that your population is not going to go up of your prison. Your arrest rates have been going up, your incidence of drug-related crimes have been going up, your incidence of forcible rape has been going up, your incidence of robbery has been going up, your incidence of theft has been going up, and those are all unfortunate societal things, and you're not alone in that. Okay, you're just like a lot of other counties in the impact of the economy and in the impact of drug problems and other things on the criminal justice system.
The next question is, why are the trips to other prisons not coordinated better so a prisoner is not taken then brought back the next day for hearings, etc.? I think it is not done to run up the cost of the transporting. I can assure you that we are doing everything under the severe conditions that we're in right now to not cost the taxpayer any more money than we have to. We're in a we're in a very difficult position right now with the overcrowding, with the number of inmates that we send out to other counties, looking for places to put inmates in various counties across the state. As we pointed out earlier, you know, we're driving people as far away as Center County State College at the cost of $800 a trip. Now, I can assure you that we don't want to do that, and there are remarkable logistics problems when it comes to making sure that the inmates that we do transport to other areas are available for hearings and court appearances when they need to be. You know, it is a difficult problem. I don't know if the warden would like to follow up on that question, but I know that he's under severe strain to make sure that these things get done appropriately with the strained staff that he does have right now.
One of the problems we have is when you rent inmates out to another county prison, we're at their beck and call, basically. When we call them, we ask them how many inmates can you take. They may tell us 1, they may tell us 5, they may tell us 20. At the same time, they can also call us and tell us that their population has risen, and we have to come and pick those inmates back up. Right now, currently, we have 77 inmates rented out to, as the commissioner said, 5 different counties. If those 5 prisons would call tomorrow and say, hey, you know, we had an influx overnight, you have to come and pick these inmates up, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in serious trouble. And what do? I mean, we have to go pick those inmates up. And I just want the residents of Fayette County to know that how important a new prison is. it would take a couple of inmates to get together and file a class action lawsuit against Fayette County, and we could be looking at a $25 to $50 million lawsuit easily in today's standards. So do we want to pay out a $25 to $50 million lawsuit? And I can guarantee you what that federal judge is going to say after that money's awarded. He's going to recommend that the commissioners build a new county prison, as what happened down in West Virginia. I'm sure West Virginia didn't want to build those 3 regional prisons, but they was mandated by a judge to do that, and we want to avoid that. We want to, you know, we have the opportunity to avoid that problem, and we need to act on it and take advantage of that.
Thank you, Warden. Next question is, what will be the total cost of building a new prison, including the financing of the loan / bond over how many years?
You pass me the mic, guys. Thank the citizen for that question. The way that it looks right now, according to Mr. Crabtree's tree study and what I have actually researched and found out, the interest rate currently is at 4.75%. Tom used a rate of 4.5%. That number, amortized out over a 30-year period, will come to a principal balance of about $50,290,000 from a projected cost of building a prison of $30 million. That's the answer to the question.
Thank you. Now this next question is for the Honorable Judge Leskinen. Can we be assured that more criminals will be serving appropriate sentences if the new prison can house more prisoners?
We have been trying to be as cost effective and responsible as we can be. We always try to use the lowest cost alternative that will address the severity of the crime and the needs of the defendant and the behavior of the defendant. An awful lot of the inmates that are in prison are people that were on probation or were paroled and showed that they didn't belong back on the street, so we sent them back. We are sensitive to the county's budget situation, and we have developed programs recently, County Intermediate Punishment with House Arrest, Day Reporting Center, to try and not break the county. But at certain points, we have sentencing guidelines we have to follow, and you know, I'm not going to predict the future crime rate or the population or the economy. We're doing the best we can to treat each inmate appropriately, and that's what we'll do in the future. That's why we have an engineer, an architect, a man that has expertise in these issues, and like I say, I'm not going to make predictions about what's going to happen in the future. We're going to do the best we can.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Yes, ma'am.
If I may, this is somewhat of a follow-up to Mr. Lally question, and I have to direct it to Mr. Crabtree. If we did nothing at the end of the 30-year period, what would be the total cost incurred by the county as far as the increase in the amounts of the budgetary line item for the prison? I know you quoted that this morning, I think around 85,000, but
85 million.
85 million, excuse me. If you could explain that.
Yeah, the difference between option 2 and option 0 in total operating cost, including debt service, including the cost of paying for the new construction, is $2,990,385. Now, for the next, this is based on an average daily population of 406 inmates. We're hopeful that you won't achieve 406 inmates next year. We're saying be ready to achieve it in 10 years. So for the first 10 years, you're going to be under that number a little bit. But for the remaining 20 years, if your population continues to grow, you're going to be over that number. So if you take that difference and you average it out over 30 years, that's how you get $85 million. That's the added cost to the county of doing nothing right now. That's a cost that you will not incur if you act. You can argue, well, you're overestimating. There is no scenario that I can come up with that I can make that number zero. It just is not physically possible to make that happen. I wish I could. I wish I could tell you that there's a less expensive alternative than spending what you're currently spending on your correctional system. But unless you find some magic silver bullet that makes crime go away in Fayette County and reduces your incarceration rate and reduces your arrest rate, which no county that I know of has found, you're going to have to deal with the reality that you've got an increasing, growing crime rate. It could reverse, but I wouldn't bet on it. And the reality is, even if it stayed stable, even if you stopped growing your prison population, the cost to the county of building a new facility would be about what you're spending today to operate and transport inmates to other counties. So would you rather spend that $8 million a year knowing that you've got the back end covered, or gamble and not spend it today and risk spending an extra $85 million over the long haul? That's a quandary that I have a hard time coming up with a scenario where you don't need to pay what you're paying today to support your criminal justice, to support your jail. And that's essentially it. The operating budget of your jail next year is going to be over $8 million. I don't see any way around that. And the operating budget of this facility 10 years from now at 406 beds is going to be a little over $8 million in today's dollars.
Yes, Jim, you want to follow up on?
Does everybody understand that that number replaces your current operating budget? That's not in addition to your current operating budget. That is your new operating budget. Okay, last year you set aside $6.5 million, $5.8 million to operate your jail, and you're exceeding that because of boarding and staffing increases, and you're going to be at $8 million next year. You're going to spend that $8 million next year. Be prepared for it. Fortunately, you've got revenue sources that are coming online that are going to enable you to handle it. The act that I talk about taking is to invest that $8 million in a way that you know that it'll be stable for the next 30 years.
That $8 million is going to be $10 million.
I'm sorry?
That $8 million
Ted.
is going to be $10 million.
Ted, please. We have a follow-up
Yeah,
response.
I wanted to follow up with the warden's comments about the Department of Corrections. In November of 2012, the Department of Corrections came into Fayette County and inspected the prison, as we commented on, and mentioned the non-compliant issues. It seems to me nobody had a copy of that inspection for us to address, the prison working group. But I got one directly from the Department of Corrections, and it's very ugly. The news media has it. I've been in contact with the Department of Corrections myself on a routine basis, letting them know how we're progressing with the new jail possibility. I spoke with them today about the prison board meeting, and the only reason, and this was told to me by the Department of Corrections, the only reason they haven't come and locked our jail up and told us to send our inmates elsewhere is because of what the prison working group is doing and has started in November of 2012. And they've said that to me and others. If we hadn't been doing this over this period of time, we would be in big problems already. The jail would be closed, they'll lock it up, and they're going to tell you, send these inmates elsewhere. But I wanted you to know that the Department of Corrections is following us with a microscope. And they were very pleased to hear today the progress we made at the prison board meeting this morning. They have a new director now, Tom Grishaw. I spoke to him directly. But as I said, they're following our progress very closely. And believe me, they can come down tomorrow and lock up our jail. And there's nothing we can do about it except pay to send all those inmates elsewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up a little more to what Tom said. You know, obviously, as we talked earlier, a new facility is going to be much more efficient, but one of the comments that Tom made in terms of the rate of inmate increase, you know, he gave two percentages. One was about 2.6,
2.8,
2.8, and 4.8.
4.8.
Okay. In order for us, as Tom already iterated, in order for us to try to stay down to the 2.8 increase, we have to institute the day reporting center, a lot of the programming that we discussed earlier, in order to help rehabilitate people, try to reduce the recidivism rate. And if we don't have a new facility to incorporate this programming into to rehabilitate people, we're going to be at the 2.8 or 4.8 rate. I mean, we're not going to be able to help keep the rate, the inmate rate down. We won't be able to help our recidivism rate. So the efficiency of having a new facility to take us into the future and keep our costs down won't be possible. So just are there any other comments from the panel? Next question, and this is a little, we sort of answered this question, but it's a little different spin on it, and this is for Mr. Crabtree. How many prisons have actually been built in all the counties you consulted?
How many new prisons?
Well, I think the question is, you know, how many prisons were built under your consultation, and how many were not?
Most, when somebody gets to the point of calling us, most of the time they're in pretty much the same predicament that you are. So a lot of those studies have resulted in action of some kind. The most common action, frankly, is renovation and addition of the existing facility, because most prisons that we've dealt with over the last, not all of them, but most are not as old as yours. Okay, Cumberland County, Dauphin County, Lebanon County, Berks County, Chester County, Schuylkill County, all of these counties that we've worked with over the years have done renovation projects or addition projects. Some counties have done new construction. Crawford County, Jefferson County years ago. So there's a blend. And some counties have made the decision to go with option 0. Union County, Pennsylvania came to us and said, our jail's overcrowded, we need a new jail, what should we do? We had just completed work at Snyder County, Pennsylvania, which is 12 miles away. They had the same judge, 2 counties with the same judge, same court. They formed that authority that needed to be formed, and Union County, in fact, at our recommendation, continued to board their inmates with Snyder County because it was the lowest cost option. Okay, that's all we're trying to get to, is what's the lowest cost option. The state of New Hampshire hired us 2 years ago to evaluate the state system of the entire state of New Hampshire. We're overcrowded, we need a new jail. Those were our marching orders. Go figure out what we need to do. Where do we build it? How should we expand this jail or that jail? We went in, we did a system-wide evaluation. We determined that they didn't need more space. What they needed was a way to get those inmates that are on the tail end of their sentence reoriented back into the community earlier. And instead of building an expansion of a state prison, the recommendation was find 3 old grocery stores, rent them, build essentially halfway houses to get those people back, and that will depopulate your prisons and you'll be able to move on. So we've had every scenario that I can think of. Many of them result in some kind of construction, not all of them. Most of them are in situations very similar to yours. In some cases, in the case of Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, which is not a county not unlike yours, in size and in a lot of aspects. Cumberland County, our first project in Cumberland County was 30 years ago. And we've been projecting their population, and we just completed their last expansion 30 years later. Most of these counties have called us back because they've seen the information we gave them was correct, the direction we gave them was right, they didn't overbuild, and 20, 25 years later, they do need to do something else. So we've got a lot of counties, Anne Arundel County, Maryland, Dauphin County, Cumberland County, that we've been back to many, many times. And, I doubt that I'll be here 20 years from now, but 20 years from now, if you act today, there's a good likelihood that you'll be looking at something that we're preparing you for, and that is the possibility that you'll need to expand your facility. So yeah, that a lot of times what we do results in some kind of improvement to the county prison. Most of the time it's additions and renovations. It's option 1. In your case, option 1 is too expensive and you don't have enough site to really accommodate efficient housing units. You have to pack them in tight and stack them up and make them smaller to fit on the site. On an open site, you'll be able to spread things out, make larger housing units that are easier and more cost-effective to manage.
Tom, you mentioned that you did work at the Dauphin County prison. Just to let you know that Dauphin County, since 1956, renovated their jail, was it 3 times, Jim? Since 1956? And our last renovation was in 1962. So that, just to let you know that Dauphin County, they've had to renovate 3 times, and we haven't renovated ours since 1962.
We did all of those projects. So each of those times, it was an incremental expansion to address the growth that was projected. We told them 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, you're going to have to do it again. And that's what happens. We don't drive that decision-making process, we respond to it.
Franklin County, which we visited, also has done 3 renovations at their prison. That's a prison that we toured, and that's a footprint that the board, the prison working group liked. I have their specs, their footprint. They're on, I believe, 19 acres. The building itself is on 2.5 to 3, but they also had to expand 2 or 3 times. But now the prison, if it has to, these are new prisons they built. They didn't expand. They had to build new ones. But now they have the property, the 19 or 20 acres. As Tom said, down the road, if we have to expand, all we have to do is put a pod onto it, and we're good to go. But many of these counties have faced this problem where they built and they didn't plan for the future. And that's what we're trying to do.
Any other comments? The next question. Do murderers, rapists, child molesters, wife beaters, and drug solicitors deserve the betterment of new overall living conditions as a Shangri-La at victims' and taxpayers' expense?
No.
And this is more of a comment. Enhance what is presently in place for the financial benefit of the county constituents. And the next question is, could construction shortcuts be feasible? I think the expert architect can answer that one.
Well, I'm not quite don't know quite what you mean by construction shortcuts, but, you know, we are not suggesting that we build a Shangri-La and I can tell you, we have never built a prison or designed a prison that you would want to be in, okay, that you would choose over your home. Hasn't ever happened, okay? It's your obligation as a county to provide a safe, constitutional environment that meets the standards of the Department of Correction and the health standards and the food service standards and the medical care standards that are enforceable on your prison. That's your obligation. It's our duty to you to tell you how to meet that obligation at the lowest possible cost. And that's what we're doing tonight. The lowest possible cost. You have a duty, you have a problem in that 10 years ago, when a study was done that said you're going to be in this situation, you didn't act. Okay? For whatever reason, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying it didn't happen 10 years ago, even though it was projected to happen. Okay? Now is now, and it has happened. You can act and at least stop the bleeding, minimize the damage to the county finances.
Do you have any idea how much our taxes will go up if we build a new prison versus continuing housing like we do now? Yes, absolutely. We're very fortunate right now that we have 2 new revenue streams coming into the county. One that just started, which is the Act 13 money, which is the Marcellus Shell money. We can help, or we can use a portion of that money to help defer the costs. As Mr. Crabtree pointed out, our budget will remain virtually the same with option number 1, or I'm sorry, option number 2. And also the second revenue stream is the gambling tax, which will come online in July of next year. And we can use a portion of that to offset the debt load also. So to build a new prison, and we will actually not have to raise taxes. Now, as Mr. Crabtree pointed out, if we do nothing and continue on as this suggests, it will cost us $2.9 million a year more than what we will be spending if we build a new prison. Now, $2.9 million, basically $3 million, will be a tax increase of $750,000. So the answer is, if we do nothing, your taxes will go up. If we build a new prison, it will not. Is there any, Controller Lally, would you like to add to?
Though I have the title of elected public official, I also pay taxes in this county for the properties that I own. I am not happy about the need to build a new prison, but what really needs to be brought to bear here, this isn't some new concept. We have a prison study from a competing firm to Mr. Crabtree dated 2003. Back in 2003, the numbers that Mr. Crabtree presented today were listed then. That was almost how many years ago? 10 years ago. The same numbers that we're looking at today were predicted then. No action was taken. At the time that that study was done, the quote to build a new prison was $18 million for 570 beds. Today, we're faced with anywhere from 27 to 31 million to build 480 beds. So the concept that this is something that is just new or that has been created by any member of this board or that numbers are fabricated are simply false. This is a regrettable necessity. It is something that in economic terms has to happen. There needs to be a barrier between those that commit crimes and those that do not. That barrier is defined as a rehabilitation facility, correctional facility, or prison. It is really that simple. And in this economic analysis, it truly makes sense to commit to this and then to commit to options that we can't afford. I mean, the numbers are there. The difference between option 0 is $11 million a year. Option 2, which is building a new facility, is $8,300,000 a year. Subtract them, multiply it times 30, and you come in to $85, $90 million. Now, I could give you a story about net present values. I could give you definitions, but that serves no purpose. The bottom line is to do nothing is going to absolutely raise your taxes. To do something, it is not. And that's my take on this.
Any other comments?
Yeah. And as with 10 years ago, the problem did not go away. And we are once again faced with that problem. If we choose to ignore it, 10 years from now, there'll be another board of commissioners sitting before you making a decision that the costs are going to be exorbitantly higher than what we've presented today. So I think the decision has to be made based on the fact that this is not something we can close our eyes or click our heels. We now must address this issue, or our children and our grandchildren will be carrying the burden. And I don't think that's none of us want that to be the case.
Can I make one comment?
Yes, you may.
Obviously, I'm not going to talk exactly numbers, but I've been working for the county for 24 years. This is my third time asked to be on a work group. And the end result continues to be the need for a new facility. But during those 24 years, or during those 3 studies, the first 2 studies, other options came up to make an impact in lessening the number of folks who have been incarcerated. And more importantly, from my aspect, is better treatment for folks. And for folks that are being incarcerated that have a serious mental illness, that was the reason for their crime. If there's a better way that we can do treatment and not incarcerate them. We have put so many other specialty programs in place to make a positive impact on the numbers not getting as high as they could be right now. I mean, the cost could be astronomically more than what they are right now. If we didn't have specialty courts like treatment courts, we have put other services available that are outside of the facility. So we've put crisis intervention teams. The policemen in all the municipalities, the city and the state, have been trained in crisis intervention. They've gone on rides in Memphis. They've been trained. They recognize people that have a mental illness and respond differently. We get them treatment, if at all possible, versus being incarcerated. So we have put so many things in place outside the community, other alternatives, less costly alternatives for folks. But the bottom line is we've done all we can at that point. We now need to do something within the facility, and the facility we currently have is not going to do it. We are not rehabilitating people. So the folks that we do have to incarcerate are not getting treatment at all, primarily drug and alcohol. There's no drug and alcohol service being provided, at a minimum, an assessment to determine they do have a drug and alcohol issue. Well, we know that the rise in crime, even the theft, has been for folks to purchase drugs. I mean, I'm just talking in layman terms, but bottom line is it's an epidemic nationally, but we're not trying to address it at all. We can't within the current facility. And if you have a son or daughter out there that had to go into the facility, you would recognize that they're not going to come out with any rehabilitation. They're going to do their time and probably repeat the crime.
Thank you. Any other comments? Next question is...
Real quick about
Sure.
it. I know cost is the main issue in here. I can see that. With our new facility, I don't think it's been touched on at this meeting. It was this morning. We want to have the magistrate's office in the jail, booking center in the jail. We want to have a room for a common police court judge to handle sentences and plea bargains. So again, cost, we don't have to transport these individuals from the facility into the county jail, into the courtrooms. That's an issue we're working with Tammy Lambie and the court. We'd like to have a common police court room in there, no jury trials, but to hear the sentencing and the pleas. You just take the inmate out of the cell, he comes before the judge. There's going to be offices in there for the defense attorney and the prosecuting attorney. These are all issues we want to get inside that facility, as we stated earlier, to cut down on cost. And if the other jails that we visited do that, and there's nothing but praise for it. But again, that's an issue we have to work with the courts on, and that's what we are doing.
Thank you. Have you considered the possibility of population decreases? Since 1990, the population of Fayette County has decreased by 22,000 people. We currently have a population of 136,600 people in this county. With that 22,000, that's a significant number of decrease in our population. Even with that decrease in population, our crime rate has gone up. In fact, in the last 5 years, it's gone up considerably more than the last 10 years average. So yes, we have. Now, I can tell you this through some economic development in this county. We're working real hard to make sure that we can generate in the private sector good paying jobs where we can bring our families, our kids and brothers and sisters back into this county to work and have a job that's a family sustaining job. We absolutely have to do that. The decrease in population is killing this county. The 22,000 people that have left are the people that I call productive citizens that have to go outside the county looking for job careers, job opportunities. That's exactly the part of the population we can't afford to lose in Fayette County. So as my colleagues on these panels can tell you, our number one priority is going to be economic development. It absolutely needs to happen because it can solve a lot of our problems. It can solve our poverty rates. It can solve our unemployment rates. It can solve a lot of the crime issues of people. If people don't work, they have no options. And if people have no options, they're going to resort to whatever they can to provide for themselves or their families. Would you like to follow up on that, Tom, statistically?
Well, we've done this kind of evaluation for 28 years. I've been doing it with this firm. I was director of corrections for another firm for 10 years. I've been doing this for 38 years. In that 38 years, I've seen one county's prison population decrease. That was Anne Arundel County, Maryland, where we went in and pointed out that they had 150 non-support cases in their jail, and they quickly made changes to initiate a work program, a work detail, so that those employed individuals that were not paying support could pay the child support that they were in jail for not paying and were able to maintain their jobs. That's the only time. We looked at that here. You don't have that problem here, okay? If somebody is if somebody is not doing support, it's the last resort of last resorts for you to put them in jail. It would be great for you to be able to implement a work release program. You don't have one right now, and that's something that we have, as a part of this study, we've identified and indicated. A work release program doesn't reduce the number of people sentenced to your jail, but it reduces the burden on the community because those individuals can keep their jobs if they have one, or you can create a work program where they are seeking employment so that they are less likely to get involved in the same activity that put them in jail when they do get out of the program, and they can pay room and board. So a work release program is something that you don't have. You're the first county in Pennsylvania that I've dealt with that doesn't have a work release program. Okay, so that's something that can be added to the options that are available to your court and your criminal justice system to utilize, that takes the burden off your criminal justice system and particularly your jail system. Those people are out during the day or at night whenever they're working. They don't need to be supervised in the jail while they're working. It costs less money, less staff to deal with those individuals. So it's unlikely that your population is going to decline. If you were to have that happy moment and be the second county that I've dealt with in 38 years, wouldn't it be nice to rent some space to some of these guys that you've been paying $60 a day to? If you actually had space to rent, you could defer some of your costs by renting it to other counties. There's plenty of demand out there. Now, I am not here to recommend that you go into the hotel business. But if that unlikely event were to occur, that is the obvious course of action that would be available to the county that would offset your costs of operating your jail by whatever rent you can bring in and reduce your overall cost.
Thank you. We have a time for a couple more questions, but we want some to make some statements at the end also. What are the average percent of cost overrun? I'm assuming they mean project cost overruns. Now, I can tell you from my personal experience, my field of expertise is project management, and the way you save money, the way you reduce cost overruns, is you do good planning. That is why we started this process last year. We have, and what we've been doing for the last 10 months is we've been actually developing an operational specification in terms of what programming we need to put into the facility, what kind of spaces we need for rehabilitation. As Mr. Crabtree pointed out, all the statistical analysis that we had to do to determine what size in terms of the number of inmates that we could handle, the inmate capacity. So all those things are important, but the cost overruns on a new project is simply a factor of how much planning you do and how well you do it. Now, obviously, oversight over the contractor is pretty important too. But I think that maybe the question is for Tom is on his project, on his past projects, what kind of cost overruns have they done between the contracted price starting out and the final cost at the end of the project?
Well, first of all, we haven't been hired to design this jail, okay? We're one of many firms that I'm sure are going to be considered to do this work. However, since the question was asked of me, I can tell you that our history is less than 2% change orders on new construction, less than 2%. In your budget that we prepared, we included in the construction costs a line item of contingency of 4 to 5%. That's double what our track record is. Okay? What what we have been able to do time and time again, and what you should expect of your architectural team, whoever they are, is that you're going to go out and at the moment in time where Mr. Lally determines that we've got the best interest rate available to us that we're going to have in the foreseeable future, there's a little bit of a timing question as to when do you commit to that bond issue. You look for that window when interest rates dipped to their lowest that you can expect them to be. And at that point, you commit to borrowing the money. And we've done this not just with county jail projects, we've done this with hundreds of school projects and nursing home projects and county courthouse projects, all kinds of county and local government projects where you lock into your budget based on this number, these studies. And what I can tell you as a firm, we have never had a facility that was not constructed because it didn't come in on budget. We have never had a facility in the history of my firm, which we founded 28 years ago, unbelievable. We've never had a project that exceeded that bottom line that we gave a county when it got to the point of adding up the total construction costs. That's what you should demand and expect of your architect. It's a tough cookie. It's a tough thing to expect. But that's what you as taxpayers and commissioners and prison board members have a right to expect, that your architect will perform, whoever it is. So we have every reason to believe that as you go forward, you will not exceed that $31 million. We have a track record. If you were to make the decision to hire us to do it, we have a track record that shows we've never exceeded the number that we presented to someone in a study. Okay? That's why that contingency number is there. There are things that happen in construction. We hit rock, we find poor soils, we find unexpected things. You need to build contingency into the budget for that. We have every possible contingency: inspection, testing, movable equipment, IT equipment. You don't have any IT equipment in your jail other than a couple of laptops. You need to have a record-keeping system that has the right software that can track your inmates and move them around. I know you're implementing some things right now. But all of those things need to be accounted for in your budget, and everything that we, by our experience, can say you're going to need to do to build this jail is in that bottom line. It's not just the construction dollars. The construction dollars are $23 to $26 million. It's all those other costs that we want to make sure that you are aware of going in. And that's why we do this kind of budgeting, is that big word soft cost. A lot of people like to ignore that. They say, well, we're going to spend $25 million and build a new prison. Well, $25 million turns into $31 million when you add those others. That's why we show them to you now.
Yes, John.
If I could add to something that Tom alluded to, I was asked a question about 3 weeks ago, Controller Lally, why the rush? Why is there a rush to build this prison? From my perspective, this has not been a rush. This project started with the Prison Working Group in November of last year. On the day that we met as a committee, the interest rate for the 30-year bond that I talked about earlier was 3.67%. That amortized amount of $30 million over that period would have been $1,600,000 in payment. Today, the interest rate is currently sitting at 4.75%. That difference in the overall aggregate value of the amortized loan is over $7 million. So for every minute of inaction, the interest rates are rising. Anybody that has ever read any economic journal, anybody who's ever studied the subject, we are going to head into inflationary times. That is a fact. That is not something that I've made up. That is a dissenting opinion. That is not a dissenting opinion by any of the professors that I study under. It is something that is going to happen. We have a responsibility to carry out this project in an efficient manner, and that's what we in this working group, and I commend everybody here, has done. We don't have time to wait. It is now the time to move. We've done the research, we've done the studying, there's nothing whimsical here, and I just wanted to make that point very clear that we are at the opportune time from an interest rate perspective to move forward on this project.
Thank you. It is past the 8 o'clock hour, and I saw Joe Sigilia back there heading toward the light switch. So, but in wrapping up tonight, what I want to do is, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, because that tells me you're interested in the process. You're here to get an education. You're here to look at the facts that were presented tonight. And for you to take the time to come is very encouraging, that we have citizens that are interested in the process and participating and understanding what the real costs are. And so I appreciate everybody for coming. I certainly want to thank all of our distinguished panel members for taking the time to come also and provide their inputs to some of these questions. Certainly I want to thank Mr. Tom Crabtree for the extensive information that he's presented tonight, and has done, in my opinion, an extremely good job in presenting the facts. So again, thank you. We will be doing 3 more of these around the county. They will be publicized, and so we want to try to encourage as many people to come as possible. I thank you for your participation and the professionalism that you all displayed tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening.
Mr. Crabtree. I know.